Hey guys, Kelade here. As you may or may not know, Battle for Azeroth comes out on August 14th, so that gives us exactly 3 months from this video until the expansion is released. So let's take a look at how Fury Warriors are currently shaping up on the BFA beta. Of course, the biggest change that we have to address first off is the global cooldown changes. Basically, the only abilities that are not on the global cooldown are Heroic Leap, our Interrupt, Taunt, your Racial Ability, and Enraged Regen. That's it. Only those 5, as far as I know, are not on the global cooldown. Everything else is. In addition to that, of course, since this is a new expansion, you're basically going to be losing all of the gear that you have acquired in the previous expansion, right? So we're eventually going to be losing all of our legendaries. Like, you'll still have them, but there will of course be a point where you can no longer use them once you reach max level in BFA. And of course, we're not going to have the tier sets, and we're not going to have our artifact weapons. And with the artifact weapons has all of those artifact traits that we no longer have, right? So rest in peace, Odin's Fury, Juggernaut, Odin's Champion, even Helya's Wrath are all gone. Now, unfortunately for Fury Warriors, we don't get any of that baked into our spec currently in BFA, right? Let's take a look at Demon Hunters, for example, right? They have an artifact trait that reduces the cooldown of Metamorphosis. And, you know, they don't have that trait anymore, but the cooldown on Metamorphosis has been reduced for them from 5 minutes to 4 minutes on BFA. So that's an example of a spec that, you know, got something that carried over. And for Fury Warrior, that's not the case, right? Even Helya's Wrath, which reduces our battle card by 10 seconds, you know, from a minute to 50 seconds, that's not even in the game. So basically, just look at it as if Fury Warriors right now in BFA are just the Legion version, but without any of the gear. So all of the issues that Fury Warriors might have right now in Legion, which are kind of like solved by our gear choices and, you know, the artifact traits kind of helping out, that's all gone in BFA, right? We don't have any of that holding our hands, right? We don't have the Massacre Ring that makes it so we can still do really good, you know, single target damage. And then also during Battlecry, you know, with the Massacre Ring, with Juggernaut, able to get, you know, crazy amounts of execute damage. That kind of makes up for weaker damage before that execute phase. Right now, we won't have that. And there's nothing right now on the BFA Alpha to compensate for that. And that's a huge issue, right? If you right now, you guys go on, you know, whatever site you guys use, Wowhead or MMO Champion, whatever it is, there's not a new section for Fury Warriors, right? You look at every other spec in the game, there's changes to their class, right? There's things that are changed, which we have changes too, but there's nothing new. There's nothing new that has been added to the Fury Warrior spec for everything that we're losing. And that's not just the case for Fury Warriors, right? Every spec is losing a lot of things. And that's true because the things I mentioned, your gear, you know, all of that artifact traits, that's all gone for every spec. But they're gaining that back in other ways to their kit, and Fury just has not seen that. And that's a huge issue, right? And let me show you an example of, you know, the new gear, the Azerite gear, right? You're gonna get this necklace and it's gonna empower like your chest, your shoulders, and I think the last one is like helmet or something. But basically it's specialized gear that, you know, when you shift right click them, you're gonna get this like reverse crucible thing that happens. In the first row, there's 4 traits, right? This first trait is basically like the catch-all warrior one, right? You can use this trait in any spec. It's just when you kill stuff, you get 44 versatility for 1 minute and it stacks up to 2 times. Fine. Just gives you blank stats. Perfect. It heals you too, so this is actually really good for leveling. If we look at the arms one, what did they get? Oh, they get execution precision, one of their artifact traits that they had in Legion, right? Let's look at Fury. What does Fury get? We get trampled the weak. Like, what the hell is this? Every time you rampage an enemy whose health percentage is lower than yours, it increases your versatility by 42 for 6 seconds. So basically, if you want 100% upkeep on this, you're gonna first have to rampage every 6 seconds. And also, this is pretty much designed for a raid boss. It kind of looks like it's not really designed that well in regards to leveling, Mythic Plus, basically anything else except for a raid single target boss. And the biggest reason why is that why does it only increase your versatility by 42 for 6 seconds, right? The general warrior trait increases your versatility by 44 for 1 minute and it stacks up to 2 times. Like, just the one stack is already 2 versatility more for literally 10x the duration. Like, the Fury Warrior trait is so bad, it's hilarious. And of course, this is the prop one, so we don't have to worry about that. But it's just, why is the Fury Warrior one so weak that you actually just pick the general one as Fury? Like, I cannot think of a reason why you wouldn't, right? Because not only that, once you pick this trait, there's no going back, right? So you can't just go, oh, I'll pick Trample the Weak for the single target fight, and I'll switch to you know, this other one, Champion Azeroth, for all the other variations of gameplay that's out there. You can't do that. You actually have to have 2 different chess pieces and select a different option for each. So if you guys thought my bags right now in Legion were full, oh man, they're going to be much more full when BFA comes out, if it comes out in this state, right? They have to let us be able to change that build. It's like the way it currently is, it is just horrible to play. The fact that you have to get multiple pieces of gear, like that's a little bit outdated. And I mean, we kind of saw that a little bit with this current expansion in Legion, with just kind of how awkward it was to change our talents alone, right? You had to, like, the tomes were not as accessible as they were in like Warlords, for example, where you can just change your talents basically at will without really having to worry about it. But speaking of talents, let's kind of look at the talents, right? So what is like the biggest changes, right? Well, the biggest change is definitely Enraged. This ability has straight up just been nerfed, right? This is our best single target, you know, talent on this row. It's the bread and butter Fear Warriors, you know, for the majority of Legion. The only one that changes, you know, now we use Bloodbath because of tier 21. But of course, like I said earlier, when BFA comes out, you know, we don't have our tier sets. We don't have tier 21. So Enraged is likely going to be your best single target talent again. And this thing just got straight up nerfed. It used to be 150% increased damage. Now it's just 100% increased damage. So unfortunately, that is there, got nerfed. The one thing I do want to say is that for Bloodbath, they did change this. Bloodbath actually got buffed. It just straight up just actually does damage when you use it, as opposed to just, you know, buffing your abilities, which is good and bad. It's good in the sense that, yes, this is what this ability needed because of all the cooldown, you know, global cooldown shenanigans. But it's bad because that means Blizzard is kind of doubling down on the cooldowns, right? They're kind of fixing abilities to make them do damage. And that's kind of like one of the 2 ways that I thought initially that they were going to go. One is either they were going to get rid of a lot of the cooldowns, so you basically had like 1 or 2 cooldowns as a Fear Warrior, or just any class in general. Or 2 is that they were going to start making these buffs do damage, kind of like Dragon Roar does, right? Dragon Roar, right, you use the ability, it does damage, and it buffs you afterwards. Great. And then Bloodbath's looking like it's going to do the same, except Bloodbath actually does significant damage, right? When you see that 960, that's a lot. It's a 960 cleave on everybody in front of you. And if we look at Whirlwind only does 417. So it's both. Bloodbath is going to do a significant amount of damage. The other thing is, while we're on this topic, just slight nerfs too, right? Dragon's Roar, like, why did they even have to nerf this? It used to do 16% increased damage, now it just does 15%. You're basically never going to take this with all the GC changes, because what are you going to do, right? Dragon Roar always crits. So you're going to use Dragon Roar first, and then you're going to pop Battle Cry, and then you're going to hit your first damaging ability, right? By the time you hit that first damaging ability, you're already like a third of the way done with Dragon Roar. Like that's how bad it is. Like, it might not seem horrible when you just look at one ability by itself, but when you combine all the things that you have to do as a Fear Warrior, the global cooldown changes are pretty massive. Some other things that have been changing here, of course, we don't have Shockwave anymore. We now have Impending Victory. Pretty much just like the one that Prot has right now. Basically a better version of Victory Rush, because Blizzard still doesn't want to give us Victory Rush. So the only way you can get Victory Rush as a Fear Warrior is if you take Impending Victory. Now, as far as for anything else, let's just get away from that guy a little bit. Wrecking Ball, it has been buffed from 250% to 300% damage. Though I don't know if there was an overall buff in the damage, because they kind of changed the way that all the spells get calculated in the damage. Oh, and they also added the PvP talents, which I actually really like the way that they did the PvP talents. Basically, the first row, you get your, the same thing as Legion, where you pick between the 3 different break CC type of talents. But the next 3, it's just a free-for-all. Like, you can pick whatever of these traits in whatever combination you want right now under your PvP. So that makes it so you have almost much more variety in when you can pick, right? Whereas before, if you have 2 talents in the same row that are both pretty good, now you can actually pick both of them if you wanted to. So I actually like that change for PvP. And a big other thing I want to know, it's not a talent because it's a passive ability, right? Are Enraged, right? First off, Enraged has been changed. It's not necessarily just like a straight up nerf, but I kind of feel like it is. So Enraged now increases your attack speed by 50%. On live, it used to be 100%, so that's just a 50% nerf. But it now lasts 6 seconds versus the 4 seconds before, so that's a 50% buff in that sense. So it's, they nerfed something by half and then they buffed the other one completely, but I still feel like it's going to be a kind of decrease, because what this kind of entails is that you'll stay in that enraged window longer, but you'll probably end up using less enrages, because right now on Legion we don't have that much of a problem keeping enrage up. Our enrage uptime is pretty good, right? It's like 80 to 90%. So I don't necessarily think that this will end up being above. I feel like it'll definitely be a detriment. Now, it might be better for players that haven't been able to keep up their enrage up that well, but I think for people that have been able to keep their enrage uptime, you know, around 80%, 90%, this isn't a good change for us. And another thing that made me really mad today when I log on to the beta, right? So a lot of my time playing on BF8 was actually in the alpha phase, and you know, it's great and all, but there was a change that was made in alpha that I thought would be interesting, right? So in alpha, what happened was when you roll within something, just like on live, you get a buff called Meat Cleaver. But when BFA was in alpha, instead of making your Bloodthirst and Rampage cleave, your Raging Blow was the one that cleaved instead of Bloodthirst. So the text actually just said your next Raging Blow or Rampage strikes up to 4 additional targets for 40% increased damage. And I was like, oh, great. So obviously Raging Blow is going to do more damage than Bloodbath because we're going to go Enraged, and it actually makes Enraged go from just a single target talent to something that's pretty good in AoE too. And I can kind of accept the fact that, oh, okay, because they're moving the spell from Bloodbath to Raging Blow, I can accept that they nerf Meat Cleaver from 50% to 40%, right? Because on live, when you do the Meat Cleaver buff, I'll show you guys again, it does 50% increased damage, right? So on BFA, it only does 40%. So I was okay with that. But now that I log on and I'm making this video, I see that they've now changed it back to Bloodthirst, but they haven't increased the damage. That's just a straight up nerf at this point, right? Because first they gave us an ability that did more damage, and you're like, oh, okay, to compensate for that, you know, you gotta reduce the overall damage that it does. So they changed the ability back to the weaker one, but then they didn't change the percentage that it would do back up. So that is pretty much what I feel like is the essence of playing a Fury Warrior right now in BFA, right? There's just a lot of things that have been stripped away from us, and there has been nothing to compensate for it. So hopefully in the next 3 months, if you're watching this, Blizzard, please, we need a lot of things back into our kit to compensate for everything that we're losing in Legion and that we're not getting in BFA. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Unfortunately, I can't just tell you guys that everything is going to be great in BFA. It's actually not, but hopefully, you know, raising our voices earlier, hopefully this will get fixed before the expansion actually goes live. But as always, thank you guys for watching the video. Feel free to subscribe to see more content. See ya.